Although both polar bears and grizzly bears are well known, which one is the more deadly species in your opinion? In reality, polar bears and grizzly bears have faced off against one another in battles due to the fast-changing climate, and one species has prevailed. Let's examine the distinctions between polar bears and grizzly bears before determining which species would win in a fight. Stay tuned till the end without skipping the video. Here we begin. According to researchers, polar bears are more subservient than grizzlies. This is because grizzlies overtly display their anger in how they move and behave, which may have caused the more subdued polar bears to run rather than engage in combat. This dynamic was also explained by the fact that grizzlies were more accustomed to vying and fighting for food on land, whereas polar bears often hunted in the ocean. The grizzlies may also be agitated since they need to gather as much food as possible before going into hibernation. On the other hand, polar bears don't hibernate. The growth and development of each mammal. These unusual mammals are designed from birth to occupy the top position in the food chain. The grizzly bear has razor-sharp fangs that can be lethal when utilized, in addition to its humped shoulders and back, giving the animals its physical power. The polar bear is equipped with powerful broad claws and long, keen predatory teeth that are ideal for tearing flesh. Although both species have the necessities for survival, they are not inherently dangerous. Each bear must begin small and develop as any other organism would. The large, fearsome grizzly bear begins life as a defenseless cub living in its mother's shelter. Brown bears and polar bears can mate and give birth to viable or fertile offspring, demonstrating their genetic compatibility. It is established that an animal belongs inside a specific species based on its reproductive viability. Researchers now have proof that polar bears and grizzly bears can interbreed even in the wild, after a hybrid bear known as Grizzly was found in the Canadian Arctic in 2006. A fascinating finding regarding one group of brown bears in particular was made when researchers in Alaska analyzed the DNA of brown bears from different parts of the world to explore genetic connections. 900 miles south of the closest polar bear in Alaska's ABC Islands, a unique group of brown bears was subjected to DNA analysis. Territorial grizzlies and polar bears. Grizzly bears and polar bears are both members of the Ursus family, although polar bears prefer to dwell by the sea. On the other hand, the grizzly hunts on land and only enters the water to fish in streams. They have been separated for a very long time due to the dominance of two different regions of North America. The lower 48 states and Canada have historically been the grizzly's habitat, but the only grizzlies left in the country are found near the Continental Divide. There are several hundred grizzlies in the Yellowstone-Teton region of the state. Who would win if grizzly bears and polar bears fought? Yes, it's time to settle the age-old debate over which bear would prevail in a fight between the polar bear from the frigid tundra and the vicious grizzly bear from subarctic North America. Given that they are both at the top of their respective food chains, they are both dangerous foes. But what if they came face to face under less than ideal circumstances? How would the variations in their physiques and hunting techniques compare? We need to look more closely at the specific stats of each animal in order to respond to this query. They are excellently adapted to withstand the severe winters of their northern surroundings, thanks to their great size and weight. Since the ideal conditions for acquiring food are during the fall and winter, polar bears do not actually hibernate. This is due to the bear's access to their primary food source, the seal. When the ice forms, they can hunt in the waters that are home to many seals after venturing away from land. They are also more difficult to defeat because of their thicker fur and fat reserves, because teeth and claws must travel a considerably greater distance to inflict any harm. Let's talk about their pupils and cats. Their paws must be enormous to support their enormous stature. Additionally, their broad size provides them with a crucial grip as they move through snowdrifts. They can swim exceptionally well thanks to their paws, which act as flippers and propel them as they pursue watery prey. Conversely, the grizzly might have a tiny advantage with its claws. The grizzly's claw is built for digging and dealing harm to any adversaries it may encounter in the wild. Despite being nearly the same size, the polar bear's claw is more suited to grabbing hold of seals, which make up most of its diet and provide grip in the snow. Bite and mouth force. In addition to having a wider mouth than grizzlies, they also have teeth that are more suited to dealing with the final blow. As previously discussed, a grizzly bear's claws are its most lethal weapon. The grizzly bear has more rounded molars than the polar bear because its diet is more diversified. Only a few creatures on Earth have bite forces stronger than the polar bear's, which measures at 1200 psi. To say the grizzly bear's bite is weak would be untrue. It is just the opposite. Moreover, it is a few positions behind the polar bear in ranking with a PSI of 975. But what do these figures indicate? Now we have to discuss its behavioral changes. We saw that bears use the resource differently depending on the time of day, with polar bear family groups and sub-adults using the resource more frequently at dawn and twilight, and lone adult polar bears and grizzly bears mostly feeding at night. Although polar bears were more likely to be driven away from the breeding area by grizzly bears than by conspecifics, interspecific interactions were less commonly hostile than intraspecific interactions. During intra- and hostile interspecific interactions, female polar bears with cubs were more likely than other social classes to act aggressively. According to our findings, grizzly bears are socially dominant when they compete with polar bears for marine mammal carcasses in the fall. Now we have to deal with their aggression. Both are extremely aggressive creatures who, if threatened, would not hesitate to defend themselves. There have been increasing reports of grizzly bear attacks on people primarily because of how closely people live with them, but only polar bears can make the very astounding claim that they are the only animals on Earth to regard people as food. Other creatures have been known to attack, kill, and devour people, but this is usually after being provoked. Instead, polar bears will stalk and hunt people to survive in the arid Arctic because they view humans as possible food source. Can polar bears endure warm weather? The gorgeous polar bear can be found largely in the frigid areas of the Arctic Circle. Additionally, they can be found in the humid continental region, James Bay in Canada, and the Kuril Islands of Okhotsk Sea, the subarctic, and many other places. Among the nations with polar bear populations are Canada, Alaska, Norway, the United States, and Denmark. Putting it to the test, can polar bears endure warm weather? Of course, they can live, but they are better suited to Arctic environments. It is therefore stressful and challenging for them to survive. So let's discuss their speed. The grizzly will again be in the lead if there is a chase or if they opt to settle their dispute amicably. With the traditional woodland foot race, the idea that grizzly bears are large and slow is a widespread one. Actually, they clock in at 35 mph and are large and quick. That implies that a bear could complete a 360-foot football field's length in 7 seconds. It is a swimmer of Phelps-like proportions, thanks to its enormous paws and sleek body. The polar bear will triumph if there is a swim-off between the competitors. This one ends in a tie. One more interesting thing I bet you know, one even thinks about, is that cooperation produces a new breed of bear. The boundaries that have kept their areas apart have grown hazy as a result of global warming and human encroachment. Despite having separate hunting grounds for millennia, they encroach on one another's history. Grizzly bears are migrating north as polar bears move inland from the shore. This expansion has reached a stage where you would expect them to be engaged in territorial conflict. The strange outcome, however, is that they reproduce because they are close together rather than fighting. A hybrid bear with characteristics of both polar and grizzly bears is the result of this mating, known as Grizzly. So that's it for today's video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Thanks for watching!